ecstasy and pleasure and all these kinds of things. And when they do that, what happens to the brain, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to try to draw, this looks like a runaway cloud, but imagine that this is basically the human brain. And so you have point A on the brain and you have point B on the brain. And so when young people go out to a party, and usually there are not adults around, or they go to the beach, or they go to a field or someplace, they have a bonfire, do something, but then they break out the beer and the drugs and things like that, what happens to them is they have a pleasurable experience, and what they have done is they have actually created a new neurological connection in their brain that was not there before, and that is there as a result of their own choice of trying to be like an adult, but having some fun in the process. Now, if this becomes a very pleasurable experience, then they want to do that again. And so they have another party, they have another opportunity, a friend invites them over to their house, they do some more and some more and some more. And so after 2 or 3 occasions or 2 or 3 incidents, that single, small, narrow neurological connection becomes greater and greater and greater. And research has shown that on the brain, you can actually create addictions in yourself in this period of time faster than in any other period of time in your whole life, going all the way down here. They have found out that if someone waits to drink or do drugs or anything like that, when they're older, that because the hormone activity has ceased right about here, that they have a much less or smaller tendency of becoming an addict after the age of puberty, and when that hormones settle down, than at any other time. And so when you're doing this as a young person on hormones, so to speak, then you want to do this more and more because it's so much fun and it's pleasurable and you get high and you feel great and all these kinds of things. And so when you do this, you're actually creating problems for yourself. You choose to go into the addictions yourself. Now the question is, if you go into adult life, you pass through the adult door with this kind of brain, you know what's going to happen. I mean, think about it for just a minute. Let's say a young person meets the person of their dreams, they want to get married, and so they start sleeping together, and suddenly, before they're married and before they finish their school, whether it's high school sometimes or college, they get pregnant. And so they feel like, well, they want to stay together, so they get married, they have to drop out of school. And so what do? So they have a child now, they're maybe approximating their 20s or just a little bit beyond their 20s, and now they've got to work jobs, they're crummy jobs because they didn't finish their school, they didn't get trained in whatever field that they wanted to work in, so maybe they're working in establishments or businesses or companies that's lower than what they expected, so they have to work more jobs, the economy's tight, they don't have much money. And so when their child is maybe about 2 or 3 or 4 years old and they're getting into their 20s where the family is supposed to be the greater concern here, and then they might have another child because that's what happens. You're married and things happen, and so now that's going to set you back even further. And so maybe at around the age of the late 20s here, let's say, that one of them wakes up one day and says, wait a minute, I need to go back and finish my school. If I finish my school, then we can get a better job and we can get ourselves out of here. So now you're spread out, you're going to school during night classes, you're working during the day, and maybe you're both still working. Well, who's taking care of the children? Well, usually it's daycare. It's usually an aunt or somebody down the street or something like that. So you have some other people raising your kids here. So by the time you get out, maybe 30 years of age, you get your education done, and now you're starting to look for a job. Your child is moving into close to 10, and so someone else has been raising your child, and so they hit puberty. You're just getting established in your job, and your child becomes a teenager, and then you've got problems. And when that happens, the great responsibility you had to raise your family, suddenly you have problems with your kids, you don't know how it happened, and so family falls by the wayside. And when this falls by the wayside, since this is the qualification for this, then this falls by the wayside, and because this is down, then this falls by the wayside. And you can see the problems that you can create for yourselves. Why? Just because we wanted to have a little fun right here in Hormone Valley. And the things that God had for you as an adult, where you're smarter, where you're wiser, where you have your life in order, the the 75% of fun that God really has for you in this life, living life the way it should be lived. And I'll tell you what, 3 times this is this, or 3 times this is this, and you get all of this to have more fun because you invested here wisely, is not a good trade-off for just having some fun right here. It doesn't add up. It doesn't make sense. This is if you go through the adult door with this kind of a brain. Now, if you don't want to go through the adult door with this kind of a brain and you're still in this window right here, the question is, can you fix your brain so that you don't go through the adult door and you don't drop all these things off as dominoes and you don't have a miserable life? Yes, you can. There is something that you can do. And research has shown this even among non-Christian people. And so here's the deal. Your brain works like this. It has a signal. The automatic default of the addiction drives the direction this way. And so you respond by going through addictive behavior. So if you want to stop that, you must have in your head Plan B in your mind. Plan B is an alternative activity. When the temptation comes, you have to be able to have Plan B in place so that when you are getting the urge to do something, whether it's cutting, shopping, stealing, pornography, whatever it is, drugs, drinking, smoking, you have to have a Plan B so that when the temptation comes, you automatically do something else, and that something else has to be healthy, it has to be good for you. And what happens if you do Plan B, do the alternative activity, that will create, if you stay with it long enough, a different neurological connection, and it will go from point A to point B. Now, they have seen this on brain scans and research, MRIs. So now, you've successfully implemented Plan B here, but if you look at the 2 thicknesses, the default addictive behavior connection is still stronger than this one. Which means, if you, when you get the temptation, you utilize Plan B every single time. What you can do, and you stay on Plan B, then what happens is this becomes bigger than this. So this is now your new default pattern. And if you do this now, while you are still in this window right here, you can break your addictions sooner and faster and less painless, or less painful, in this window right here than you can at any other time down here. And the reason is because the stickiness factor now works in your advantage. This kind of pattern is basically called discipleship. It is taking what God's Word says and implementing it. This should have been Plan A all along, but this became Plan A because you were responding to temptation. Now you're going to get serious with discipleship. And listen to this. If you go into the adult door with only this kind of a brain, where you're still yielding to temptation, you still have the addiction, it will take you years to decades to rewire your brain like this, when, if you had started here, you could have done it in a matter of weeks or months. And that is the difference. That is the crucial difference. If you have a brain that is addictive and responding to temptation, if you're a young person, I encourage you with everything I know how to encourage you with, to get busy on discipleship now, because you can turn this thing around. You can get your 75% of your life going in the right direction even before it happens. And history shows that the biggest predictor of success in adult living is what you do here in the 2nd decade of life. This is the way it works. This is the way God's Word has said. And if you remember what 2 Timothy 2:22 says, it says, flee youthful desires. It's been in there for 2,000 years. We now know why, because of the nature of the brain and how life works, why we should not be running towards having fun defined by teenagers in Hormone Valley. It's not a good place to be. Hang tight, get discipled, stay godly, aim for this, and I can guarantee you, you will have much more fun for a longer period of time in your life. Thanks for watching.